So you really didn't see it coming?
No, and sort of in hindsight, it seems a bit silly, really, because it was a bit of a long-running joke that the company that owned us, they were always, they were always in danger. There was always something wrong with the money, and it was always, we never had enough money in, but we kept going. We were MPC. We'd worked on some of the biggest movies in the world. We were too big to fail, and unfortunately, that was a sort of swift reminder that nothing is too big to fail.
Welcome to the Silent Epidemic, a podcast by Omniotherapy. I'm your host, Hatice Mehmet-Quirk. Today we're joined by Paul Ormerod, a creature effects artist who's worked on major Disney and Hollywood films. Paul was part of the team at MPC before the company's sudden closure, an event that left many talented creatives out of work. He has since joined Framestore, but the experience reflects broader challenges within the VFX industry: burnout, instability, and mental health pressures. Paul also served as a mental health first aider and co-hosts a comedy podcast, something that helped him find balance in a demanding field. Paul, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time. Let's start with your journey. What led you into the world of animation and VFX?
Do you want me to start with what VFX stands for?
Yeah, it would really be helpful because I'm there and I'm like, okay.
Yeah, it just stands for visual effects. So there's a bit of a difference between CGI and visual effects. CGI is like purely computer generated images, where visual effects might be just like everything all encompassing. So it could just be like background replacement and all the rest of it. What I do is like work on creature effects in particular. So that's working on cloth and hair simulations and all the rest of it. So it's essentially all the sort of, if you think of effects work as like fire, smoke and rain and all that sort of stuff, it's anything that could be kind of not hand animated, so to speak. So not someone posing it and moving it around. Someone does that before us. And then we do the bit that just reacts to all of that. I got into it as a bit of a gamer when I was a kid, and I went to university not really knowing what I wanted to do. I studied computer game design and very quickly realised all the sort of artistic stuff I really enjoyed, but not the actual video game making side of it. So I sort of fell into it that way.
Right. So your attention to detail must be quite on point, right?
Yes. When you work on major films, you do have to, because you'll be working on something that can really easily just, you'd be like, oh, no one's going to see that. No, you won't notice that. But you have to remind yourself that sometimes it's going to be on like an IMAX screen or things I don't know, you could work on something potentially that be on the that sphere in Vegas. You cannot get away with something that, you're not going to get away with it. It's going to be
magnified.
Someone will find it. That's the problem.
So in the intro, obviously it mentioned that you worked for a company and obviously the company let staff members go, and also the pressures of working within the industry that you work within. Can you tell us a little bit more about the impact on, say, your mental health or your colleagues' mental health of working in that environment?
Yeah, so visual effects is very much a sort of contract-based industry. Like permanent contracts are offered occasionally at certain companies, but it depends completely from company to company. When I went to NBC, after a couple of years, I was awarded a permanent contract and stayed there for a very long time. But it's typically based on the length of the show that you're on. Yeah. Because of the sort of volatile nature of the movie and TV and advertising industry, you can sometimes need a team of 10 people, you sometimes need a team of 2 people, you might need a team of 60 people. It completely changes from project to project. So it is probably the most significant mental health challenge, is the constant unknowing of how long you'll be working. Like, I've been very fortunate to work at places that have been great at being really forthcoming about the situation and the rest of it, but towards the end of NPC's existence, that unfortunately was one of the things that slipped.
Yeah. Because I suppose they were uncertain about what the future held, so they couldn't really tell anyone else about what the future held.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I was even briefly in a leadership position, so I've been on both sides of it. Having to experience the sort of what is, like I say, I was made permanent, so I was very fortunate in that position, but colleagues not really knowing what they were going to be around, so that can be quite stressful. But also having to explain to people the scenario of why they've done nothing wrong. They've done a great job. We don't have the work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So it sounds like the project by project basis is a pressure in itself, because obviously, you're working on one, you might know for how long, but you don't know what's next, and you don't know where that might bring you. You don't know how long that will be for. So it's all the unknowns that are causing the issues. But it also sounds like the work itself. I mean, that I mentioned earlier, your attention to detail. That's got to be a massive pressure in itself, because I don't know, but I know from myself, for example, when I was doing my degree, writing an essay, you write it and you think it says what you want it to say. And then you take a break, you go back and you read it and you're like, it doesn't say that. But when you're in it, you think, and I guess it must be the same for visually. If you're looking at something, you must see it how you want to see it, but others might not see it that way.
Yeah, there's actually a couple of tricks we have to employ because you can look at something for so long that you can either completely overlook a problem or issue or something broken, or hyper focus on something that actually doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So a couple of things. Sometimes people will flip the image back to front. If you've rewatched something over and over and over, if you flip it horizontally or upside down, something might start catching your eye that you're like, oh no, that's not behaving the correct way. The other ones, we massively encourage everyone to essentially peer review. If you're unsure or something's gone through a lot of revisions, just tapping the guy next to you on the shoulder. What does this look like? I mean, talking about writing an essay, essentially what happens in what we do, depending on where you are in the pipeline, you could potentially have been given something to write about, written about it very well. Someone's reviewed it and said, can you change that? And then that's okay. And then the next person says, actually, I don't like that. Can you change that?
Yeah.
And then the third person, just before it finishes, goes, can we change the subject? And you're like, oh, okay. All times. But that's just the job. Anything sort of client delivery based.
So you're meeting the expectation of the delivery because of the outline that you've been given, but that outline could change at any given moment, especially when it's reviewed by different people along the way.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah, not necessarily maliciously.
No.
It's just sometimes you do something and there's nothing wrong with it, but the director may look at it and go, actually, that's not quite what I was envisioning. That's part of the game.
Yeah.
Until you get to the end of the project and it's just like, we just got to get this out.
So we also mentioned in the intro that you use your own podcast to lighten your load, give you a different focus, shall we say. It's comedy based. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
So obviously I'm very fortunate to work in a particularly creative industry. I think that's probably typically one of the things people complain about most about work is a lack of creativity. Whereas ironically, having worked in such a strong creative industry, I don't actually have any say, and almost no one has any actual real say over what you're making.
Right.
There's very, very few instances where you can particularly put your own stamp on it because you're delivering what the client wants. That's essentially the thing. We're client driven. The podcast is it's silly fun. It is essentially movie based, but in a completely different realm to anything to do with visual effects. And it's just a silly billy fun time to blow off steam with some friends. Yeah.
Just a quick break from today's episode. If you've ever tried to get therapy, you know how frustrating it can be. You're finally ready to talk to someone, but you've been stuck on a waiting list for months. That's not how mental health support should work. Omnia Therapy makes getting help simple. You can book a session with a fully qualified professional in just 24 hours. No waiting, no contracts, just real support when you need it. And at £40 per session is actually affordable. If you're struggling, don't wait. Tap the link in the show notes or head to omniahealthgroup.com to book your session today. So it's quite interesting because I never actually thought of it like that, even though I'd said to you earlier about you following the outline of the project, not being able to put your own creative stamp on something. I would have expected you to put in a bit of you in it, but actually you're just following. It sounds like you're just you follow that outline to a T to produce that person's vision.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, we're not necessarily given strict creative freedom. There's plenty of challenges where the shot is just what it is, And if you think of something nice, you can potentially push it, but you've got to get through a lot of layers of approval for it. And we have supervisors' jobs who it is to essentially get the director's vision. So you might do something very cool, but they're like, "That's very cool. It's not what we want." I think a massively famous example that even people outside the industry will probably attune this to is Sonic the Hedgehog.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember when they first released the trailer for that character? Essentially, he looked one way.
Oh right.
He looked not particularly
spiky.
He definitely looked spiky. That's probably a decent way of describing the way he looked. If anyone's listening at home, Google original Sonic design. That was not a decision made by that company to make him look like that. That is essentially almost guaranteed going to be what the client asked for.
Right.
And there was significant backlash and they had to remake it.
Okay. Reminds me of the time where my nephew, the youngest one, is a massive Sonic fan, and he said to me, "Daisy, can you draw me Sonic?" And I drew Sonic, and he said, "What is that?" That's
about the reaction that everyone had. I think that's about the reaction everyone had to the original trailer. Even myself being like, I don't think that was any creatives decided.
Oh, it's good to see that even the creatives get it wrong.
Well, I mean, it's more the
I'm not artistic in any way, shape, or form. So
I would say actually that's kind of a misconception about what I do. I wouldn't, but leading up until university, when I studied it, I was not good at art at all. I can't draw photography. Like what I do is more of a technical based role, to be brutally honest. It's all essentially simulation based. So taking, I guess, art, what someone's made before, of like a moving character, and then setting up the parameters, how the wind should behave to blow through the hair, and how the hair should react to that wind.
And then I suppose even how you got into it, because you said that you started by gaming and being into gaming, and then you went into a degree around that, and then you realised actually I don't really like making games.
Yeah, I mean there was an element to what I did, which was I was like, oh, that's art based, but it's not really, okay. That's not going to be what I want to do. I want to be the techie person who sets up the levels. I can't remember exactly what I wanted to do. And then when I got to university, finding actually there are avenues in the art based world that aren't traditionally art based, if that makes sense. There's lots of technical roles.
Right.
Yeah.
So you went on that journey of exploration and found yourself in a completely different direction from being in the industry and seeing that actually it's not that way, it's this way, and that fits me. Yeah,
I originally I wanted to be an animator, so like moving the characters around and posing them as they are. And then I realised that wasn't also for me either. So then I started pursuing a career in what's called rigging, which is essentially like, if you think animation is moving the toy, rigging is building the toy. Like setting up everything so the arm moves, and as the arm moves, the shoulder moves in a certain way, and as he blinks, what moves. And then from there, I realised I'm actually more interested in all the things on top of that. So that's how I got into creature effects.
And how? Because obviously technology is changing. Equipment changes, how we do things is ever changing because of the change in technologies. How do you keep up with that pace within the job that you do?
In my career so far, I've had to change our main program that we use to do our visual effects 3 times.
Right.
And that is quite a significant blow in a strange way, because you suddenly go from being exceptionally confident to having to, in my experience, learn from your more junior members of the team. So these kids have come out of university who've been studying it. We're now we're going to use that program. And you have to essentially leave your ego at the door and go, you're going to have to learn from people who are younger than you. There are going to be people who are less experienced than you that maybe know something you don't.
Yeah. I felt a little bit like that the other day when I picked up my youngest. She got the new Nintendo Switch. And I just couldn't figure my way around it. I was like, what is this madness? And she was teaching me,
so drive straight and turn at the corners.
So are you noticing that, as you say, young people are coming in, but because they're more used to using those programs, they then have to sort of guide you in your way of how to adapt to those new programs?
I think so. I think it's probably more accurate to say that it's an industry that's constantly evolving. It sort of goes to the old, it's a bit of a cliche, but every day is a school day. You know, a perfect team is going to be a mix of sort of people who are probably learned some technical things that you don't essentially know, and then theoretically someone like myself would be more experienced in how to sort of meet the challenges of a particularly difficult shot, or you know, how to manage our deadlines better, etc. But everyone can learn something from everyone. You know? There should be no dead weight, so to speak.
So you're always open to learning from anyone in the team at any point?
I think you have to be. I think if you start becoming too sure of yourself, that's when you're going to run into trouble. It's certainly, I'm sure it is the same for lots of industries, but in my experience, I would always much rather work with people who can do the job and deliver the work on time, that are pleasant to work with, over a difficult genius, so to speak.
What's the biggest challenge that you see?
There's been a couple of years now, I think, it's safe to say, of downturn, like sort of since the pandemic. Around the time of the pandemic, I think, maybe don't know if necessarily everyone notices this, but there was something new on Netflix every week. Or every month there'd be a couple of new shows. And that isn't the case anymore. And there'll be, you know, cinemas are not having as much to go and see. So there's a significant drying up of work. And also constantly, the clients want to do things bigger but cheaper. We want to have less people do it in half the time, all the time. That's the difficulty, the biggest. But again, it all goes back to, is my contract going to be renewed?
Just a quick break from today's episode. Have you ever felt like the kind of support you need just doesn't exist? Maybe you need help outside of normal hours. Maybe you don't even know where to start. That's why Omnia Neurodiscovery exists. We offer specialised, flexible mental health support, including intensive evening and weekend packages for people who need something different. If that sounds like what you've been looking for, don't wait. Tap the link in the show notes or visit omniahealthgroup.com to find out how we can help. And in terms of mental health within your industry, do you feel there's enough support around it? Are people open to talk about it?
I think so. In my experience, yes. It's hard to sort of speak for everyone because I haven't worked at every company and I can't, you know, and then every company has multiple departments and each one of those can be run certain differently, you know, and all the rest of it. But I think some of the major changes is before, say, the pandemic, because of the nature of what we're working on is clients, intellectual property, and our securities are through the roof. We absolutely cannot take anything out of the building. So the idea of working from home was a pipe dream. But then the pandemic kind of forced us to have to do that because no one was allowed to come to the office. And that's massively changed everything. You know? Yeah. I think that's the sort of biggest fear you'd probably ask anyone on the artist's floor right now, is that they'll take that away. Because it's completely changed everything. It's an industry notorious for crunch, sort of unavoidably, you know, and potential overtime. But the difference between doing that overtime at home and doing that overtime at the office is astronomical.
Okay. So do you find that, or have you come across in your experience in the industry, people that have struggled with their mental health that have been comfortable to go forward and say, oh, hi, HR, person in HR, I've got a problem, I need help?
I'm not sure I would comfortably say go to HR. Like the introduction of when I was becoming a mental first aider, that felt like a significantly good step in the right direction. The idea of it behind when we did it was to have someone in the team who was not of a senior, like not your boss, not your line manager in any sense, you know, had no influence over your contract or anything like that, was someone that you could signpost you to the right places. Or in my experience when I did it, it was mostly just taking people for coffee. Or just being like, just saying, having something, can we go upstairs and have a chat? And the big thing is to get out of the office.
Did you find that people did come to you quite often?
Not super often. Not like, certainly not like every day or every week or anything like that, but it would often be. I found it more often than not, sometimes I would reach out to people that I could see potentially struggling but not comfortable talking about it. And not pushing by any stretch of the imagination, but like, I'd like to get a coffee. Can we go for one? And then you're sort of able to post out.
Do you feel that having the mental health responder training helped you identify those struggles more clearly than you would have done before you had the training?
I think it probably made me more just aware, more observant
Yeah.
of it. You know, beforehand, you would just sort of seem like, oh, they look a bit
Glum,
down, or they look
yeah.
a bit, you know, whatever. But realizing doing the training was like, it's actually probably beneficial to take half an hour out of my own day to be like, what's on your mind, so to speak, you know. The biggest one I often found was essentially imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
I suspect it's rife in dozens of industries. But,
Every single one.
but a creative industry where the work you get gets reviewed by people multiple times.
Because it sounds like it's just constant judgment, right?
The big thing is it's never judgment of your ability.
No.
I've never experienced that. But certainly if you're new to the industry, that can be quite hard to take. Whereas if you've come from, say, school, or if you've come straight out of school, you potentially have never had someone quite, not necessarily bluntly, but emotionlessly just say that was rubbish.
Yeah.
You know, or that isn't good enough. You know, and not essentially politely.
Guide you, coax you through to the idea. But it's not quite hitting the spot, right?
Essentially that can be quite difficult, you know.
Yeah,
and essentially you just have to work it out. But in every team I've worked in, essentially the person reviewing the work, they say, that needs another pass, or that needs another go, can we time that? And then your team collective would help you.
So in your role as mental health first responder, it seems like it helped open up your eyes to sort of notice things a bit different within the team. Did it help you at all personally in terms of how to manage your own mental health, or ways that you can support yourself?
Potentially. It's hard to quantify, I guess. I've always found supporting others can be quite a good benefit to your own, you know, sort of shared experiences. And again, back to the sort of imposter syndrome, I don't believe anyone doesn't suffer from it in some respect, you know. So when you talk to others that you yourself think are brilliant and then they say similar things, it can be a reminder of like, oh yeah, everyone is sort of going through the same thing, you know. So that is a benefit, you know. But
So you've worked on some huge productions. What's it like being part of the machine that brings blockbuster films to life?
It can be actually, I've said to you, quite mundane.
Right.
Because essentially what you can end up doing is working for a very long time, like weeks and weeks and weeks, on essentially 2 seconds.
Wow.
If you think every time it cuts, that's, in what I do, that's one that I would do the whole bit of that.
Right.
But if you're in potentially one of the departments before me, you might be just doing one of the characters on that 2 seconds and someone else might be doing the other one.
Wow.
So, and it can take, you know, in any 2 second shot, 60 to 100 people may have had a hand in it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Wow. I know I had an idea that obviously these things had a lot of manpower and a lot of work on them, but not 60 to 100 people per 2 second shot.
Yeah, I mean, not necessarily uniquely. Like I would do more than say 2 seconds, but you know, it might be the same people. But I would encourage you to, if you watched a big visual effects blockbuster, like any of those sort of Disney remakes, that are very heavily visual effects, stick around to the very end of the credits and just watch the wall of names that cascades out. Yeah, and not everyone gets a credit, unfortunately. Yeah, we can't promise everyone. But there's a significant amount of pride as well in what we do. You know, we are very lucky that when you get to work on something of such monumental scale, you can take your parents or your friends or anything to the cinema, and then you can sort of whoop and cheer as your name comes across. And that can be a bit of a band-aid if it's been a particularly rough project. You get something at the end of it, which is great, because not every industry is lucky to have that. You know, some people can go through significant mental health challenges and finishing a project, and essentially that's it. No one in the public will see it.
I suppose it sounds like it's a nice ending for you to a project.
It can be. Try not to read too many reviews.
Yeah.
They're obviously not reviewing you directly, but that can be that's a hit that I find new people are not necessarily prepared for. To work on something for potentially like 3 years and then just find everyone hates it.
Oh no, yeah. That must leave a sour taste in your mouth.
Yeah, you get used to it after a while. because you know if you go online and read reviews, the people who bother to write anything is particularly nasty, and then you find out the film made $1 billion. So you don't know whether
couldn't have been that bad. Hey?
Yeah, they are making more of them.
Yeah. Just a quick break from today's episode. Let's talk about something that doesn't get enough attention: mental health at work. If you run a business, you've probably seen it. Stress, burnout, employees who aren't performing at their best because they're struggling. The problem? Most companies don't know how to address mental health in a way that actually helps their team. That's where Omnia Corporate Training comes in. We provide CPD certified mental health training that's practical, flexible, and designed to fit into any workplace. If you want to invest in your team's well-being, and let's be real, happy employees perform better, tap the link in the show notes or visit omniahealthgroup.com to learn more. Let's talk about the collapse of MPC. How did you and your team experience that moment, and what did it teach you about the industry's stability or lack of stability?
Yeah, so what essentially happened on our end is that there was a rumour going around on the Friday that I think, if I'm correct, our colleagues in the US were not getting paid.
Wow.
And we were like, oh, that's scary. What could that mean? And we had lots of group chats and all the rest of it, as you do with any team. And sort of the fool that I was reassuring everyone that, like, no, we have very strict labour laws in the UK. You know, I've had to deal with this as a leader at times and all this shit. They can't just not pay us. It'll be fine. And then, unfortunately, on, I think, the Sunday, the email was sent to everyone to be like, do not come in.
Oh.
So that was quite an experience, because I'd always been sort of a champion of, like, however bad it gets, you will get a warning. It cannot just be taken from you overnight. You know, we hear horror stories of, like, colleagues in the US and in Canada and North America who are told that, like, your contract is being cancelled, please collect your things, and leave that day. Whereas in all of my experience, at least, there was always at least a 2-month notice, which is still very difficult to deal with, but you were at least given forewarning. Whereas, unfortunately, that whole scenario, everyone more or less overnight was made redundant. And there was no, and the company, because, you know, the difference between a company being made redundant and having a process and someone you can still talk to, the company just essentially ceased to exist.
So, like, on a Sunday evening where you're sort of sitting there probably with that dreaded feeling of, oh, I'll get ready for work tomorrow. And then all of a sudden, there is no work to go to tomorrow.
No, and what's bizarre is because it was essentially our parent company, so MPC didn't fold. The company that owned it, Technicolor, is the company that had the trouble. We were on potentially an upswing. We were excited for new work that we had acquired, and talking amongst ourselves of colleagues we would try and rehire. You know, as I said earlier about, like, teams growing and shrinking, we were particularly small at that time, talking about who have we worked with that we really liked, who was great, who should we get back, we've got this new work coming in. And then it was a rug pull.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you really didn't see it coming?
No, and sort of in hindsight, it seems a bit silly, really, because it was a bit of a long-running joke that the company that owned us, they were always, you know, they were always in danger. There was always something wrong with the money, and it was always, you know, we never had enough money in, but, you know, we kept going. We were MPC. We'd worked on some of the biggest movies in the world. We were too big to fail. And unfortunately, that was a sort of swift reminder that nothing is too big to fail. Yeah.
And then obviously you were fortunate enough to go on and secure the job that you're in now, and you've got that stability back.
Yeah.
I dare say, were there people in and amongst the team that you were working with that didn't have that luck?
I think most of my closest colleagues, I think almost all of us are now, like, thankfully back in employment, which is great, because it is a particularly rough time for the industry. Like you're saying, there's just less and less being made, and they want to make it with less people. But bizarrely, there was a real sort of inspiring community spirit in the aftermath of it. Like, massive amounts of group text. I don't know if we're allowed to talk about WhatsApp. Set up just to basically, like, help people through it. You know, the industry is, the backbone of the industry is basically our European colleagues who have more recently had to rely on visas, which is an added stress for those guys. To suddenly have your job disappear overnight, that is an extra stress. For myself, there was the stress of just trying to find a new job, but I was never under threat of eviction. Not only from my home, but the country. That's a particular stress. But it was amazing, the people who set that up and helping people essentially navigate getting redundancy via government schemes and other schemes and all the rest of it. They were brilliant, those guys.
So it sounds like a difficult time. It sounds like there was this community that came together to support everyone through the difficult time and give options of help for different avenues of support that was available to people.
Absolutely, yeah. Like towards the end of our time, we were at some of the smallest heads in the company B, and I was there a long time. So people naturally get closer. There's less people in a company. The smaller the company, the more sort of tighter the bond of people. But yeah, absolutely. In those sort of days, or weeks immediately after the closure, it was really quite inspiring. The amount of efforts people went to support each other and also reach out from other companies. NPC was a real giant of the industry. Talking to colleagues who had jobs at other places would talk about, well, I was sort of relying on potentially coming back there when my contract here ran out. So that's another stress. So it didn't even just affect the people currently working there. But the support of helping people find work was brilliant. It still sort of goes on to this day. I'm sort of quite loath to go on LinkedIn. I find that as a significant drain on mental health via the nature of it, because of our industry. But it was, when you're looking for work, you have to engage with it. But I find myself now trying to pay back a little bit, actively making sure I jump on there, because if I see someone who is still looking, can I share or can I signpost them to something that might help them?
Good. Paul, thank you for sharing your story and your honesty. It's eye-opening to hear about the behind-the-scenes pressures of the film industry and the importance of having creative and personal outlets like the comedy in your podcast. Before we finish, is there a final piece of advice you'd offer to anyone feeling overwhelmed in their work or creative journey?
The biggest thing I see a lot of people who get their first job in industry is they've spent their whole time preceding that essentially doing personal projects and development and all the rest of it, which is fantastic. And if you are someone who can manage that workload, I would absolutely encourage it. I was never one of those people. As soon as I got a job in the industry, I realized that I'm going to learn so much more from just simply doing the job with my colleagues and do that. Just be a sponge, and then when you finish your day and get to go home, go and do something fun. Go and relax, go hang with some friends, and something other than visual effects. Because while you're there, you need to be soaking up everything. If you come into work tired, you can't learn. If you've done a full day's work in the office and then gone home and done 2 or 3 hours on a personal project or stayed up till midnight or whatever, you aren't going to be as useful or learning as much the next day.
The word burnout springs to mind.
It's really apparent. People can really easily do it. Yeah, absolutely.
And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in to the Silent Epidemic. If Paul's story resonated with you, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. We'll be back soon with more stories on navigating mental health and resilience in modern life.